Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this new session of the European Research and Innovation Days, a session specifically dedicated to a new instrument within the innovation landscape, which is the EIC Fund, the so-called super fund for this title of the session. The objective of this session is to tell you more about the EIC Fund, which has been incorporated on the 22nd of June, to tell you about its main features, how it is different than the usual VC fund that you can find on the market, but how it has a lot of commonalities also with the market fund. And for this purpose, I have the honor to have with me very distinguished speakers. I will introduce them one by one during the speech that we have, and we have also the chance to have at the end of this session, in the last quarter, the presence of the Commissioner in charge for Innovation, Research, Education and Youth, Mrs. Gabriel. So it will be a very intense and I hope very interesting session for all of us. But let's start immediately. I have the chance to have with me here in Brussels the Director General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, Ms. Kerstin Jolna. Kerstin has a very long background and very impressive background in financial, industrial and innovation policy. And she's also a member of the Board of Directors of the EIC Fund. Thank you for being with us, Kerstin. Yes. And I will start with a very first question. This is the first time, in fact, the European Commission will make direct equity investment in companies. So can you tell us what is the EIC Fund and why we have created an EIC Fund? Okay.
What is the EIC Fund? It's a fund under private law. Only shareholder is the European Commission so far. We have a board. And you will see some members also in the course of this discussion. We have an investment committee, and again, it's represented here. And we have an investment advisor, which is the EIB, and it's also represented on the board. So looks fairly normal. We have a project pipeline of some 140 projects that would like investment. And we invest between 500,000, 15 million. That's what we're looking at. We're doing equity investment, direct, which is very different from what we did the last 20 years, which was indirect equity investment. And we've built this on the structure of Horizon 2020. When Horizon 2020 was built, nobody clear in his mind would ever have imagined we would be doing this. So there are a number of constraints we have to deal with. Why are we doing this? That's a very pertinent question. And Jean-David and myself, we've argued about this quite intensely in the past. You know, is this for the public policymaker to do, really? Well, let me say this. Public policymakers have to create the public good. And that may be well-being of our citizens, clean and healthy environment, secure environment, job creation, good economy. And for that, we need solutions. And today we realize that only regulation or only grant money will not bring us these solutions. So we're looking at actually helping companies to produce these solutions. And not only produce them, like finding them, but also scaling them. And when it comes to scaling, sometimes investors, they say, this is too risky, I don't go there. So that's where we want to put the seed money, and that's where we want to make the case for investing in solutions that will help to create this European public good. What we need is a good combination between the policymaker, the screening of the horizon, you know, where are the solutions we need? Vaccines. The Commission just recently proposed the 2030 targets for to get to climate neutrality. We need solutions. The heads of state next week will discuss very much resilience and strategic autonomy. What are the solutions we can find here? Digital. It's the digital decade. Where are the solutions here? We in our speech, Mrs. van der Leyen spoke about the e-identity. These are the solutions we need. And we hope that with the EIC Fund, we will be able to help these solutions actually to emerge fast, because the world is changing fast. This is what I would say at this stage.
Excellent. Many thanks, Kirstine. You are one of the key senior managers within the Commission dealing with financial instruments now for a long time. And in the last 2 decades, I mean, we made a lot on financial instruments. What are the main difference between the usual financial instruments that we intend to continue in the future, maybe in a different way, notably in the context of InvestEU, and the EIC Fund? How they are different, but how are they complementary?
I think they are totally complementary because we need a venture fund scene in Europe, and we didn't have that a couple of years ago. So by our active engagement, I think we've allowed investors to come in, to discover it, and actually collect enough information to be more reassured to invest as well when it comes, I come back to my notion of European public good. The fund is, in a way, a shortcut, I would say, because now we do no longer look for a fund to invest himself in a company. With the EIC Fund, we invest directly into the companies. And of course, the companies have to be worth it. They have to be worth it because we are convinced about the potential they will bring for green transition or cyber shields, just to know, to say some of it. And they will need our support, our immediate support, to scale fast, because otherwise it will take too long to have the solutions. And if you ask me, Jean-David, if I have an investment proposal of a high-risk, high strategic interest company versus a low-risk, low strategic interest company, our fund should go for the high-risk and high strategic interest one. It's not that we are out there to lose money, obviously not, but we need to put our money where our needs are.
Very, very clear, and I'm sure that now you understand why we are very proud to have Kirstine at the board of the fund. Thank you for this policy vision and the key roles that the EIC Fund is expecting to play and is starting to play. Let's move now maybe to the vision of a private actor. And for this, we have the chance to have with us somebody which was at the origin of the support of many deep tech companies, notably in the IT sector. He co-founded a number of high-tech companies like Acorn Computer, Active Book Company, Virata. I can name numbers. He's also a serial entrepreneur and a co-founder of Amadeus Capital. I'd like to welcome warmly somebody who was also at the origin of the reflection on the EIC as a whole, Mr. Herman Hauser. Thank you for being with us, Herman. Herman is also the vice chair of the EIC Advisory Board and a member of the board of the EIC Fund. Herman, in your view, what are the main gaps and market failures to which the EIC Fund could make a contribution?
Well, the big problem we have in Europe is that we have only 1/5 of the venture capital that the US has per GDP. So we are lagging behind the firepower in the US to support their innovative companies, and now also the firepower of China. So what the EIC is trying to do is to be a catalyst, just as Kirstine said, to support these breakthrough technologies and bring them to the market, and be a catalyst to crowd in the market of our own venture capitalists in Europe, but also capitalists, venture capital from all over the world, and of course also corporate venture capital.
Thanks a lot, Herman. As you said rightly, the EIC Fund aims at crowding in other investors, in particular from the private sector. Huh? From your experience, and you have a very clear and demonstrated one, why is this principle so much crucial, and how the fund should make this happen?
Well, there are so many excellent projects that have been supported by Europe through the European Innovation, through the European Research Council, through various universities that can't find enough venture money at the moment. But with the EIC as a catalyst, we will be able to crowd in the market and scale these companies fast enough to be reasonable competitors to the US and China.
Thanks a lot, Herman. I propose we move now to one of our next speaker. She's not in the board of the EIC Fund, but she's a member of the EIC Advisory Board. And she's a journalist at heart. She's the co-founder and CEO of Openers, a network of facilitators and service providers at the intersection of innovation, helping technology companies enter new markets. She's also a founding member, and head of public relations of Tech Open Air, for those who knows, because it's one of the largest tech festivals in Europe. So I'd like to welcome also here today Kerstin Bock. Kerstin, what is the EIC Fund look for, and what kind of innovators and companies it is supposed to support? And maybe if you can tell us also how they are selected, who is making the final decision on investment? You are participating also to the investment process. So maybe you can tell us more about all of this.
Sure, very happy to. Good morning. So, I mean, what are we looking for? So we already heard from Kerstin and also Herman, that I guess looking into the diversity of technologies, we're pretty open with the focus, but, as already mentioned, we want to support breakthrough and most and forward also deep tech technologies and deep tech companies out there that can really make a difference and really crowd in that market, I guess. I mean, what we do see at the moment lots is medtech, for example, deep tech, green tech. So, there's, really various areas, and we really don't want to focus here because we do see all these verticals arising across Europe. So we really want to, be open there. But I guess, where we can really make a difference is also, as Kerstin already mentioned, now and then maybe, take a higher risk in that sense that, we would always crowd in the market, but at the same time that we can increase the funding for those European companies to really arise. When we look into profiles, if you ask me that, and teams, I guess as any VC, we look for well-balanced teams that have the guts to get their companies going, I guess. So, in a team, we would always look for a well-balanced team when it comes to leadership, technology, but also, running the organization, obviously. Looking at the process, so first and forward, we have our great EIC jury, which helps us basically generate the deal flow, because what Kerstin mentioned, looking at the 140 deals that we have in the pipeline right now, we look at, I think, a total of 9,000 applications during the EIC pilot. So there is a massive pipeline that is coming from somewhere that needs to be reviewed and really help us with getting the deal flow going. And then we have also the EIB after those jury panels, which help us with the whole due diligence and the validation process and all of it. And then us in the investment committees, so me and my great 6 colleagues, so we basically look through the cases that are passed on to us, and then every one of us gets a few cases as a rapporteur, so where we can really dive into the topic, try to understand the company, meet the team, and see what's on the table. And then ultimately, we have our board, which approves or challenges us, I guess, in those investment recommendations to really make the right decision after syndicating also with other, hopefully, lots of potential co-investors.
Thanks a lot, Kerstin. In your views, what makes the EIC Fund different regarding other VCs? What kind of different support it could provide? What kind of specific actions or means it can bring?
Yeah, sure. I mean, looking at the EIC, I guess we're a startup ourselves. So looking at that, I guess we still also have to find our USP in those coming years. But, then again, what Kerstin and Hermann also already mentioned, I think we have the means here to really make a difference in terms of increasing investments within Europe in, really arising technologies. So I think what we can make sure is that, those companies really get the, I guess, ticket sizes also with us, potentially matching and mirroring also like Series A rounds in the size, when we look into, for example, hardware companies that probably need a much, sort of larger sum at a certain time to basically get their product go to market and really get the product fit and all of it. And I think that's something, that would definitely make a difference there. Looking at, those companies that we really want to arise in Europe and, also see those, I guess, unicorns potentially coming out of Europe instead of, not instead, but I mean, I guess also as we can see in the US and so on. But then again, the way that we're trying to really set this up and the way that we're really trying to look at these cases, it really is also with the perspective, I guess, from the market. So I think we don't want to differ too much from other VCs, but really also, work with them as much as we can and just make sure that we increase, on the one side, funding in Europe for those European companies. And at the same time, really see those companies scaling. I mean, that's what we're here for. We really want to see Europe and those companies that we support scale. And I think that's, something that we haven't seen at that size in Europe. And that's also why I'm super excited to be a part of this.
Thanks a lot, Kerstin, and thanks a lot for all these clarifications that you have provided, in particular the link with the VC market. And as you said rightly, we are not totally different, but we are really complementary. Now we have the chance also to have with us the responsible of the EIB mandate management activities, as well as for equity, new product and special transaction department inside Europe, but also outside Europe. I have to say that I worked with him now for something like 12 years because we were already together when we launched in the context of the previous framework program, the first debt product within the framework program for research and innovation, the so-called risk-sharing finance facility at that time. So I'm very happy to have with us also today Christoph Kuhn from the EIB. Welcome, Christoph. Christoph, the EIB is involved in the piloting of the EIC Fund as the advisor to the EIC Fund. Concretely, what does it mean? What is the role of the EIB in the process that Kerstin mentioned a few minutes ago? On what are you working? What is the scale of your activities? How many enterprises are currently under due diligence? Can you tell us more about this?
Thank you very much, Jean-David. It's a pleasure to be with you and with this distinguished panel. Look, I think our role as EIB is to help and support. This is a great initiative which is very complementary to the other financial instruments that we are implementing together with the Commission, but also with our own resources. So our main role is help with the expertise that we have and make it a big success. Now, we do that in 4 roles. The first role is already passed, but we helped the Commission to actually set the fund up. We helped the Commission to draft the respective legal documentation, find the right administrative partners, do the market assessment so that we have the right administrative agents in place, set up the legal entity in the local authorities here in Luxembourg as it is now set up, and just make sure the fund becomes operational. And that is now completed, and I have to say it was a very, I think, successful and good process. And we're very grateful for the partnership with the Commission colleagues on this one. Now we are operational. So our role here is to support. We are an investment advisor. So what we do is two things as an advisor. First, when a company is selected by the EIC panel, we run a due diligence. And why do we believe we can bring value here to the EIC Fund? Is simply because we have a lot of experience in looking at individual companies. We are operating Europe's largest venture debt activities. And I think we have learned a lot in this experience, and we are very much happy to provide this expertise on a deal by deal basis. So we do that. And then our summary will go to the EIC Investment Committee together. And here we come with the third role that we play with our structuring advice. So when we actually interfere in the financing structure of a company, it's very important that the financing is structured legally and financially in such a way that it actually fits into the needs of the company. And here we also help, and we make a proposal to the EIC Investment Committee as to how this transaction could be structured. And then last not least, we play the role together with our subsidiary, the European Investment Fund, as a linkage to the ecosystem of other investors. Notably with the portfolio of more than 200 venture capital funds that the EIF is invested in Europe, but also with national promotional banks and other corporates. So we link up the individual companies with this ecosystem so that we can also mobilize third-party funding. This is in a nutshell, Jean-David, what we are currently doing. Clearly, we are in the uprun of this system. So you asked about the number of deals that we are currently looking at. Well, we are recruiting currently still. I mean, we have already a full designated team in place, but we are ramping up. Our current portfolio of companies that we look at simultaneously is 20 to 30, which is about the number of companies that come in every quarter into the pipeline. So our job now is to catch up with the pipeline and also make sure that the EIC becomes fast and will deliver speedy the needs that are expressed through the open calls and through the 140 companies that Kerstin already mentioned that are waiting for financing. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Maybe a second question for you, Christophe. Is it possible that as a result of a due diligence, you came with a negative answer? Or is it possible in the context of your talk with the investment committee that a negative answer in terms of investment recommendation may pop up?
It is in principle possible, but it's not the objective. And just to give you a little bit of sort of practical experience, when we go into a due diligence, of course, as in any due diligence, we identify weaknesses and risks. And indeed, some of these risks could become a deal breaker. Now, our job is also, with our advice, to provide mitigating measures that will allow the investor, in this case, the EIC Fund, to actually accept this risk. It could be a structural, a legal obligation. It could be a, for instance, milestone-based disbursement. There could be many features in a financing that mitigate risks and that indeed allow then the EIC to still invest. So that's always the objective. And I think in the vast majority of cases, we will be able to find a structure, even if the due diligence is a tricky one, that will then allow the EIC to invest. However, there is indeed the possibility that a risk may be so material, or there may be any other reason that an investment will not be advisable. And then we could indeed make the advice to the EIC Investment Committee to not invest. However, we are not taking the decision in any case. We are just giving an advice, a professional advice, and then it's up to the EIC bodies to take the respective decision.
Thank you for this very important clarification, Christophe. We are a bit in advance, dear speakers, on our timing, and the Commissioner will join us in a few minutes. Maybe we could use this moment to talk about maybe two other aspects. The first one I have in mind, and there I'd like maybe to go to Herman again, is that obviously we are in a learning process, and in this learning process we are gradually building the doctrine of the investment strategy of the EIC Fund. If you had to identify what should be the 2 or 3 main elements of this doctrine, what would be your points, Herman?
Well, the main point that we have to keep in mind is that we have to support breakthrough innovation in Europe. We're falling behind the US and China, and this is our opportunity to catch up. So that's number one. Number two, we are actually not that bad in startups. We actually produce more startups in Europe than they are producing in the US. We have a scale-up problem. We don't grow our companies fast enough. And this is the main objective of the EIC, to crowd in the markets to make sure that these companies can grow into substantial companies and make a difference to the European GDP.
Thank you. You addressed, in fact, already at a certain extent, slightly, but even previously in your intervention, Herman, something that is, of course, very important today, which is the question of tech sovereignty for Europe. And here, maybe I go back to Kerstin. Do you see a particular role for the EIC Fund, I mean the EIC in general, but the EIC Fund in particular, regarding this objective of technology sovereignty in Europe?
I totally see that, because we're screening the horizon, and this is really a means to screen the horizon, and the screening of the horizon has to also feed into the policy-making process, because we have the Foresight report, we have the 2030, but we will now have to translate how every single industry can actually contribute to it. You know, where are the solutions for green steel? Where are the solutions for transport of hydrogen? Where are the solutions for cyber shields or e-identity? Where are the solutions? I mean, where's the horizon screening for what could be the next epidemic, and what are the means, how do we have to get organized for it? All of this, I feel that the EIC gives us the possibility to have bigger binoculars, to see further and identify both challenges and opportunities, and to get quicker to that space. And we have an incredibly powerful kind of tool behind it, which is the single market, which I have to say, as Director General for the single market, which can actually be used to accelerate the solutions that we find. And this is, even when we invest, then it's the scale up, but we can do a lot around it with our regulatory tools as well. So I think it's a total win-win situation, and it's very frontier, what we're doing.
Thank you, Kerstin. Dear colleagues, Kerstin, what are your views about this?
Well, I think what Kerstin also just mentioned, I mean, if we're looking at really making a difference, I guess, and I think with all the challenges that we're solving here, I think, and this is also why the EIC took this very, unique route of sort of like direct investment, I guess. I think real innovation we, mostly do see coming from the market. And I think the only way that we can really do see this coming from Europe, for Europe, and for, the things that, with basically tech can be, I guess, innovated and challenged, So I think that's also why we're taking this, I guess, in some ways also risky step, because we truly believe that those innovations have to come from the people, from the market out there. And if we really help them scaling, then, eventually that can really basically help us on also that, I guess, level of like, I guess, solutions for the society. So I think I can only pretty much agree. But I think that's, also putting out trust, I guess, in the talent that we have out there in Europe. And I truly believe in that. And I think that's our, where we really want to drive this forward.
Thanks, Kerstin. Christophe, any particular view also on this important topic?
Jean-David, I would like to make one remark on your first question, which is the investment doctrine.
Yep.
And the sort of the philosophy behind the investment approach. I think it's of utmost importance that while we learn and while we ramp up this new super fund, that we develop this doctrine very clearly, and also that there is an understanding out there what is the philosophy of investment, because it makes also for us as the sort of supporter and structuring advisor a huge difference whether the objective is to maximize return, to maximize policy impact, to find a balance in between, to look also, of course, at tax issues, etc. I think we need to make very clear to everybody what is the investment objective and the philosophy of the EIC, and from that then learn and deduct operational implications like structures, return expectations, etc. I stop here. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot for this. It's indeed inherent, as you said, to a perfect comprehension and understanding also of the market. It's obvious that this body and the EIC as a whole is a public body in the sense that it has to achieve public goods, public aims. But an important dimension that was stressed by other speakers is that by definition it must be complementary with the private sector. It should not overlap with the private sector or crowding out the private sector. We should build on the strengths of both sides. And the rationale for it was that it was necessary because the private sector was not able to deliver alone. So, and on this we must be absolutely clear. It's a kind of alliance, if I could say it this way, between the two worlds in order to tackle a particular gap, and in fact several gaps, depending on the stage of development of the companies we are supporting.
Also challenges, I would say.
Yeah.
Because it's not just making a market grow.
No.
And I mean, innovation is good, I would say, but solutions are better.
Solutions are better, and this is a very important point. And I'm sure that our audience, or if it's not the case, I will mention it. You have noted that in the future framework program, I mean, in the future and fully fledged European Innovation Council, while we will remain, of course, with some calls with a bottom-up approach, we will have also a number of calls which will be more top-down, more challenge-oriented, in order to fit also much more with policy priorities of the Union. I had in mind, for example, the various value chain priority of Commissioner Breton, and of course the priorities, the global priority of the current Commission van der Leyen. Be it on Green Deal, be it on digital age, be it now after the COVID crisis, obviously on health. It's a number of domains where very likely the EIC, and in particular the EIC Fund, should play an active role in order to deliver. I'd like maybe to ask you, each of you, a very simple question. What would be for you the image of the success for the EIC Fund in 7 years' time? I mean, at the end of the next programming period. Where should we be with the EIC, and in particular with the EIC Fund? If you had to, in one or two sentences, tell us what are the criteria for success. What would they be? Maybe we start with Herman.
Well, there's a very nice saying that the European Research Council is producing Nobel laureates. I think the mission of the European Innovation Council is to produce unicorns. We are a very large, we will be the largest VC fund in Europe with 10 billion euros. We hope to crowd in 3 times as much money from the market again. So altogether, it will be about 40 or 50 billion that we can spend on this. And we hope to have lots of new breakthrough technology that become billion-euro companies.
Thank you, Herman. Kerstin. This Kerstin, not that. I have the chance to have two Kerstin with me.
We did this exercise, like a month ago, where we've been also talking about the vision for the EIC in maybe like 20 years time. And we said, so if we really go for like 20 years time, then, in a way, hopefully the EIC won't be needed anymore because we've done the job, we have as many unicorns in Europe, as Herman said, and we significantly, basically added to the European GDP with the companies that we support. So I think for the 7 years plan, I guess that's exactly what we, hopefully achieve by then, so that we can clearly see what we contributed to, like the European GDP with the companies that we supported, and hopefully really do see these scale-ups that, can help, I guess, Europe make a true spot for companies to scale.
Thank you, Kerstin. Let me welcome our commissioner. Thank you, commissioner, for being with us. Maybe I debrief you quickly on what we just discussed. So we discussed, of course, the EIC Fund, as you know, the rationale for it, how it could play a key role in funding the gap that we have in Europe regarding the support to a risk and high growth potential startup and SMEs, how it is different but very complementary to other investors in Europe, be it from the promotional side or the public side, how it works concretely for our audience, and how the EIB advisory role is, what is the role of the investment committee, what is the role of the board members that we have with us. So we touch a little bit other issues, like, for example, the key role that the fund can play in the context of a tech sovereignty debate and what could be the success in the future. So maybe 2 or 3 questions to you, Commissioner, because you were very leading on the need to do something in this part of the innovation ecosystem in Europe. What is the European Commission long-term vision for the EIC Fund? What would you like to achieve?
Thank you very much, Jean-David. I would like really to use this opportunity to thank the entire team for the very hard work that we have seen the last months. Even with these short introductory remarks, I can confirm that it's something very encouraging me, because that's our long-term vision. You already pronounced some of the key words, because of course with the European Innovation Council, we want to find the brightest innovators with the most ambitious ideas in the European Union. And I think that with the European Innovation Council Fund, what is quite important since the beginning, that is impact-driven. It's not that just return on investment. And that's why my wish is to see the European Innovation Council Fund as the investment arm of our European Innovation Council. And you already pronounced another key word, how really to help to fill this funding gap at the startup stage, where the European Union venture capital market underperforms compared to the global venture market capital. And I would like really to see that the European Innovation Council Fund will become a reference for the European VC industry. And that's why I'm very glad really to see that we are looking at the same direction, but the most important that we are working for this, it's with a very, very concrete and encouraging results. Because, okay, now we just approved the first round of investment of 39 million, but there is 140 in the pipeline, and the demand is huge. That's why I very much wish the next step to continue to see how we can contribute in order to recognize this support, to have gender balance. That's something important for me. And at the same time, together with EIC Fund, to contribute in order to build a more sustainable future with a particular focus on different areas, of course, but we all know that green and digital transitions are now the two main priorities. That's why this is just my vision for the EIC Fund, and I can say thank you very much for encouraging us that it's not only possible, but it is possible because since the beginning we are co-creating, we are co-designing, and we are working together to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We were touching also another important current debate, which is European technology sovereignty. How do you see the role of the EIC, and in particular of the EIC Fund, in this debate?
Well, first of all, I'm very glad that today we are talking openly about this issue, because I remember I was digital commissioner and in the past I already spoke about this. Now maybe we start to achieve a critical mass of people thinking not only about this, but looking how in a very concrete way we can affirm the added value of our European approach. And remember that even last week President von der Leyen explicitly mentioned in her 2020 State of the Union speech Europe digital sovereignty. So I think that it's a very, very good message. But in this spirit, the EIC Fund, that means for me new opportunities. Opportunities that first time the European Commission is making direct equity investments in companies. And this allows for protecting the strategic interest of the European Union in relation, of course, with our political priorities, with our policies. And such strategic interest will be deemed to exist, for example, where a project involves strong security, defense aspects, or where just the European Union wants to establish some European sovereignty on key technologies. That's why, for me, the approach is really to be as concrete as possible, because sovereignty in some of our member states that don't have the same meaning like in others, and let's find the strength of our common position. And I'm very glad that thanks to the EIC Fund, we can already see what are the different key technologies, and especially how with EIC Fund we can help our companies to protect our European interest, and not only to protect, but to affirm our leadership. So I think that it's quite encouraging what we see today.
A last question, Commissioner. So the coronavirus crisis is heavily impacting our society. In this context, how the EIC Fund, according to you, should contribute to the recovery from the COVID crisis?
First, I'm really confident that the EIC Fund will continue to help us to address the global challenges, including the recovery from this devastating crisis. It's not only a question about money, because first message, I will be there really to support the budget for the EIC, and that means for EIC Fund. But in the coming month, what will be crucial for me is to see how we can help our SMEs in those critical moments, because SMEs, very often we are hearing that's the backbone of our economy, but now it's time to show them that for us that's something concrete. And that's why I'm really very impressed by the targets of the fund. Risky, innovative enterprises that need mostly equity to scale up and create high-skilled jobs. I like very much this connection, because during the R&I days, I think that thanks to the EIC Fund, we can see how much research, innovation, and education are going together. And we can only use the different strengths. And that's my final message. I think that the EIC Fund has already demonstrated the agility, the flexibility, and the responsiveness. So now it's just time to continue, not only to make us dream, but to believe more and more that as Europe we can be a leader in this field.
Many, many thanks, Commissioner. Thank you for being with us in this session. We are coming to the end of this session. We have no time, unfortunately, for questions for the audience, but I would like to thank warmly our distinguished speakers. Thank you, Kerstin, again. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Kerstin, and thank you, Christophe. And many thanks again, Commissioner, for having been with us at the end of this session. and for your inspiring words. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.